back. I hope you had a great lunch. So we're at the site demo.
Into the mic.
Uh,
And tilt it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Since you're a little taller.
So this is the room mic. So we're going to be calling the various people who are going to be presenting and doing their site demos. Eric's going to be sitting in the back. Each group will have about 8 minutes. At 1 minute before your time is up, Eric's going to flail his arms. At 8 minutes, you'll hear an alarm. At that point, if you could just move on and I'll introduce the next person, that would be great. And just another piece of business. As Carrie rightly points out, it'd be great to speak into the speaker for accessibility reasons for people in the room. We also ask that you kind of stay in this general vicinity. We have another speaker here that's going to the video, a microphone that's going to the camera for the recording. And there's a keyboard and mouse here that controls the screen. So when you come up, you can put in the URL for your repository. Any other comments?
Is that microphone on? It is it?
Yeah, I'm just not speaking directly into it. So, yeah.
I just wanted to make sure. So some people might be bringing up their own computers. I just wanted to make sure the dongle was there.
The dongle is there.
And I didn't mention Mark Jordan will do one, if you have time for Mark.
We have time for Mark.
Yay!
Mark will go at the end then. Our first individual, we're going to Emily from UNLV has graciously is the first person up, so thank you, Emily. Yeah.
Okay, so this is the Islandora site for UNLV Special Collections. I will just jump right in with a search and then kind of explain what we see from there. Okay, so these are the search results, and we don't have the advanced search yet. Just a keyword search, and then we have filters over on the right hand side. And then we have different types of search results here under the content type. So what we have are digital objects, so like digitized materials like photographs and documents. We have archival components, which is sort of like a file, the description of a file and a finding aid, an archival finding aid. We've got archival collections, so like a collection level record, people, organizations, I can't actually read the last one. Oh, web page, and geographic location. So we've got a lot of different stuff in here. So I will show sort of like what our organization page looks like. So while we are working on having an advanced search, we kind of just rely on these filters. So we've got an organizational history of the Sands Hotel in Las Vegas, and then over to the right we have like related archival collections you can click on, other related entities, links out to authority sources, a nice little timeline, and then related digital objects at the bottom. And let me go to so this is what our finding aids look like in here. It's pulled from archive space, and you have some of the basic information on this page with the inventory over to the right, and then also you can get to a PDF copy of this finding aid, because some of our users like looking at that a little bit better. And then we also have a process where we go through and we add, we use arcs to as persistent identifiers for our digital objects, so we can add those back into the PDF version of the finding aids, you can click right to stuff. Because one of our major goals when we decided to move from from Contentien to Islandora was to have our archival description and our digitized items linked more closely together. And you can see we've got some breadcrumbs at the top, so you can kind of see that this digitized document is part of, is kind of within this archival organization. I don't know how many people are archivists in this audience, but I am, so that's why this is a lot about, how archives look in Islandora. Okay. We can search within a collection, so that's kind of nice. And if we don't click anything, if we don't enter any search terms, it will kind of show us anything, and we could filter down to just see all of the digital objects, which would be the equivalent of like everything digitized from this collection. So that can be helpful for users. We've got a lot of compound and complex digital objects in here. And we also have a lot of different versions of files. So this is a PDF file of like an entire archival folder, but we also have the TIFFs in this system. So you could download either version. It's just a little bit harder to get to the TIFFs just because of the UI. But for the most part with text, a user would want a PDF anyways. And it's got full search and everything. So this is what it looks like when it's a complex object or a compound object with just TIFF images. So we've got a description of the whole group, and then you can click. I think that's my favorite part about Islandora is you can just keep clicking forever and be brought to all these different places. You can click back and see what it's part of. We've got all our metadata kind of set up in different tabs because we have so much of it, and you can download from here too. I think that pretty much covers a lot of what there is to show. Does anyone have any questions in the last minute?
Did you try to replicate the sort of the box folder within the collection sort of?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, so our digitization, we reuse a lot of the archival arrangement and description, so that's why it will be like an entire folder of stuff is digitized, and we don't actually go through and add like item level metadata. We'll just be using the archival description for that folder and adding to it. So yeah, there's a lot of different levels of description, which can be confusing. Yes?
What metadata do you hang your related items on? When you expose the related items, is that just stuff that is in the same font, or is it, like, you know how you have the page and you use related items on the bottom? Are you showing sort of almost like a shelf browse, like with some things that are around it, or is it some other piece of
I think it's based on like subject and creator fields.
Oh, cool, okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Emily. The next individual up is Alina from Carnegie Mellon University.
It's not going to be, can you hear me? It's going to be, can you see me? I'll work on it. And I need a box. Is this working? Yeah. Well, this is going to be interesting. I noticed people are just doing this like ad-libbing, and I actually went through all this trouble to write my notes because I can't ad-lib, so you're going to have to deal with me doing this. And I wrote more. So, All right, so here is our digital collection. We actually migrated during COVID, so most of it was done from home, except for our digitization team. They had to go in because they don't have those scanners at home. So we have currently 392,443 records in our instance of Islandora. This is the one we're currently working on. I think there's like about 1 million photographs that we're working on. Some are in now. We're still working on those. Let me see. So one of the issues that we had with, we were in archivalware, and one of the issues that we had with it was searching. You couldn't really, there was no depth in the searching, and you would put a word in and you'd pull up parts of words that had the word in it, you know, so if it was like robot, you would get robotics or something with the word robot in it. So we have a better time with this now. Where it actually pulls up the, like these photographs are awesome, but I'm gonna actually look at this right now. The tartan is the student newspaper, and so we now can pull up where it'll highlight the, I can't see, I am lost. I can't see where I'm at.
You can try to move the podium a little.
Oh, here I am. So now we actually get the actual search within, which we had a problem with before. It's better, but it's not perfect. So we're still getting there. But the enhanced metadata is what's helping us narrow our searches. The metadata was awful when we took it from archivalware. I mean, we should have just started over. It was pretty scary. So that took a lot of time. But now that we've switched to Islandora, we can show off the depth of our collections more now, which helps with people who want to research, like the hardcore researchers who want to navigate the actual archival folders. It's easier now because we have that information. So another thing we had an issue with, dates. We needed to normalize a lot of dates. We had so many people in our metadata, including students and other employees, that no controlled vocabulary, no dates in any sort of format. It was just whoever put it in the way they wanted. So we got to do that when we migrated. So that's a big weight off our shoulders. We definitely in archivalware and in our archives we have folders with subfolders, with subfolders, subfolders. So with Islandora we're able to actually show all of that, whereas before everything was a little hard to show subfolders. So like I said, it helps with the depth of the collection. We're working on ways to download OCR, but we have not gotten to that point yet. Where am I at? Yeah. So I was gonna search robots, but the problem with that is it pulls up some of the stuff we need to fix. I didn't want to show it off and be like, look what we can do. So I didn't do that. But we currently have a collection that is about robots. This is a different sort of version of our Islandora, and it's a robot project that we did, and it's more of an exhibit than it is like a searchable database. And the one thing that this has that we were never able to have before until Islandora is video. We never could put that in our online stuff, so that's kind of cool, and we'll probably have more of that eventually. Yeah, and the people who worked on this project also dabbled a bit in linked data. We don't really have it right now with our other data and our metadata. It's so hard to see it. So like I said, this collection is the one we're currently working on. Like I said, it's huge, and it's taking, actually we brought on another temporary metadata person just to help with this one because it's so big and it's been hard for all of us to get in there. So one of the things in this that's really fun is that we have this thing at CMU called Buggy, and it was started out in 1920. It was known as the Infraternity Motor Sweepstakes, but it now is called Buggy. And the cool thing about Buggy is when it first started out, let me find this really old one. This one. It was, oh, here I go again. Here. These racing buggies, and people could kind of build whatever they wanted. But now they build these things where, like, seriously, I'm not kidding, they push them and there's somebody inside of them, which is terrifying. In there, there's someone in there. And then they have a race every year. So I don't know what they win, if they win anything other than, like, cool, you lived. But yeah, so that's some interesting stuff about our Islandora. I was going to talk to you about our Shakespeare folios, but I don't have time, which is kind of cool because I'm not good at this. But if you have questions or you want to know about it, I do have a pamphlet on it, and any questions I can point you in the right direction, especially if it's techy. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Great, thank you very much, Lena. And the next person up is Bennett from University of Toronto, Scarborough.
Oh man, very, very nice. All right, cool. Yeah. All right. So I have some pretty basic slides going on here. Okay, so I'm.
Do you want to hire?
No, this is perfect.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm going to be walking really quickly through a dedicated project website that we've put together recently and kind of migrated into a new form called the Scarborough Oral Histories Project, or SOHP. In particular, I wanted to showcase the way that we're using access control, how we've indexed transcripts, and our use of the Able Player player for audio files. So, brief introduction to SOHP. This is a dedicated project website with a dedicated collection that is kind of subdivided into 3 collections. So this is a group of, and I'll see if I can. Well, it's not going over there. That's okay. What I'll do is this, and we'll play it fast and loose here. This is the Scarborough Oral History site. It's divided into 3 collections, which kind of straddle interviews with community members from around Scarborough, as well as students, faculty, and staff at the University of Toronto, Scarborough. These interviews are conducted by a researcher partner of ours, as well as a number of student researchers through coursework and things like that. There are, I think, around 300 interviews currently in the repository. I pulled that number out of my head, so don't hold me to it. It's a really neat project that we have going on. Kind of as a part of, because these are audio interviews, it requires kind of the attachment of a number of different kinds of media to a given node. For this project in particular, we're attaching both the original preservation file, a thumbnail file, usually a headshot of the interviewee, consent forms, because this is a recording of research to which participants had to consent. We want to store that information for researchers to access in the future, as well as a service file to which we've also attached not an original file, but rather a transcript. So we have 5 different kinds of media attached to each node in an ideal world once it's considered to be complete. However, there are some further considerations when it comes to access to particular kinds of files. As you can imagine, we don't want the general public to necessarily have access to the consent forms signed by the participants, especially if they have identified that they would like to remain anonymous. And so because of that, we are using an access control module on each of these nodes to make sure that we are including the consent forms with each interview, but that they're only accessible currently just to accounts with admin privileges. So here, well, we'll just go for it. So this is what a repository item looks like normally. As you can see, even though we have the consent form attached here, it's not accessible. So even if you go to the media, I'm logged in as an admin, so I'll be able to edit this consent form right here. But if I were not logged in or were logged into an account with admin privileges, this piece of media would be blocked out and inaccessible for me to interface with. And the way that we've done this is using this tab right here, Access Control with Group, where we use this user interface to basically assign a group private media to a given piece of media, in this case the consent form. And this private media group says that all pieces of media contained within it can only be accessed by users with permissions. So that's the way that we use it to control who can access our consent forms. There's a secondary use for the access control that we use on this site though, and that is that we want to make sure that the website is accessible and compliant with AODA, and because of that, we need to have an accurate transcript to accompany every interview. And it is a pretty laborious process to process and correct transcripts, so they come in on a rolling basis. What that means is that any person for whom we have an interview, we have all the metadata completed, but we don't have a completed transcript. We haven't waited to ingest them into the website, but what we have waited on is making any of the media besides the thumbnail accessible to the public. So, for example, I happen to know this person does not have their transcript in yet. Nope, he does. Who was it? Oh, different Michael. Franco. Here it is. Well, I'm just wrong, I guess. Let's see. Here we go. But basically what the node looks like is it. Well, it's not properly set up there. Yeah, well, yeah, okay, thank you. Basically, what this would show is this player would not be present to a person who doesn't have the admin privileges who's visiting this node, and instead they would be able to access all of the metadata, navigate around the site from here, but they would not be able to access the interview until we turn off the access control. I'm going to kind of speed through here a little bit. So as you can see, we're using the Able Player audio player to play these files. If I can go to somewhere with an actual transcript, you can see how it's set up with the transcript below. As we play this, I'm not gonna make sure it's muted, but you can see the transcript gets highlighted as we walk through the interview, and you can actually navigate around the interview by selecting timestamps on the transcript. I don't have a ton more time, but I do also want to flag the transcripts are indexed. So if you are looking up keywords, they are going to be showing up not only in the rest of the metadata, but in the transcripts. As you can see, if I look up Vaccarino, you can also see places where people have mentioned him in their interview, and it gives you a sense of where in that interview he's been mentioned. At risk of having the timer beep at me, I'll probably call it there. There it is.
Sorry, my volume went down.
Yeah, thanks, Evan.
That's good. Yeah, thank you. Next up is Yamil. And will you be using this one or your laptop?
I'll use my laptop.
You use your laptop? So Yamil's from Berkeley College.
Oh, here we go. Again, my name is Yamil. I'm with Berkeley College of Music in Boston. Hopefully next month we'll launch our Islandora 2 site, where we were migrated by Born Digital and we're using Isle. My boss decides how the site is assigned, so I've deferred to him, and I think he's got great decisions, not that I disagree, but so, this clearly says banner test 1. We have a Drupal developer, so at some point we're going to have real banners in here. So that's some nice customizations our Drupal developer was able to do. And I like that our Drupal developer added these footer quick links for various things that we haven't really launched, but I'm starting to use them more and more, these quick links that he added to the bottom. Is our basic collection look, and we'll tweak it some more. One controversial decision that we did is we have online history projects, but we decided to create a custom content type instead of using the ones that come with Islandora. This was my boss's decision because I kind of liked, for example, a Born Digital code to do oral histories, but my boss preferred the one that we were already building. Like maybe we have seen the Born Digital before we start our own, but we're hoping to take advantage that we're just running Drupal now, that soon our collections list will list these custom content types that we have. We have one for oral history project, and this is what it looks like, our homepage for those. But they're not showing up in the collection search yet. That's something will be done probably in a couple of weeks. And this is incomplete, but this is what the BOHP, we're going Berkeley Online History Project. So I think we're gonna have the transcript on the right, but it's unfinished. Something that we had created as a content type in our Islandora 7 was this content type for what we call Berkeley Online Events. And we added it to Islandora 2, and we hope that it will show up in the searches. But I know it's a content type for remote video, but we might migrate that into the future. But we have a choice with Islandora 2 that we could stick to our own content type. So I'll report back in a couple of years what we ended up doing. I had my Drupal developer create this view that I think others may benefit from, or a version of this. I can look up a taxonomy term, and it'll tell me which taxonomy it belongs to, and if it's being used by a particular node. So because I was installed with the install profile version, I need to keep track of my resource types, but some of the resource type terms can happen in the model. So I was kind of losing track which one was which and what was the ID number for a term. So I told my developer, please let me look up, I looked up the term image, and it tells me, okay, on the resource type is TID7. If like when I'm creating my CSV files for Islandora Workbench, I can quickly look up what's the right number. If I'm being lazy, I don't want to spell the whole thing out. And on their models, yes, there's another image, but there's also a moving image. So I thought this was a nifty view to keep track of what's being used and what are the TIDs. So I started showing this to Rosie, and I think a version of this would be great to have in the starter site, for example, so other people can take advantage. Because it was driving me crazy to keep track of the TID and which image is it. Is it a research type or a model? And that's all I wanted to show you, and maybe in a month I'll be going live. So thank you for everyone that gave me tips to get this far.
Okay, next up is Mihaela from University of Alberta.
So just a short introduction. My name is Mihaela Lovan. I am the Assistant Director of the Canadian Writing Research Laboratory. This is an infrastructure project that has been running at the University of Alberta. It's actually a multi-institutional project, but run primarily from the U of A since, I think, 2013, when we started building our first Islandora 7 instance. We've been fully active since 2016. What we're doing is, on top of your regular Islandora functionality, we've added a bunch of features and toolkits that turned it into a virtual research environment that supports collaborative work, primarily cultural heritage research projects. We have on average about 100 active contributors to our repository every year, a total of about 400,000 objects, and a total of 32, I guess at this time, research projects, any of like about 15 or so active any given year within that interval. So we are now partnering with Bucknell University and Newcastle University to build the next generation of this virtual research environment, which is based on Islandora 2. And it's going to be rebranded as Linked Editing Academic Framework, short LEAF. So when I mentioned that we're taking collaboration to the next step, I wasn't kidding. So this is kind of like the LEAF platform that we are building. And this is how it relates with a bunch of other tools, external tools that are either developed by our research and development partners, other groups within the Canadian DH community primarily, and we are also, this time around, the platform itself would have multiple installations. One of them would continue to be the Canadian Writing Research Laboratory, which supports cultural heritage in Canada research projects, but our partners in the US and the UK are going to focus primarily on publishing. And when we talk publishing in a DH context, a lot of times we're talking first very detailed and meticulous XML editing. And for that, we have a tool that we developed called the Leaf Writer, which is an in-browser JavaScript-based XML and RDF editing tool. It currently is available as a standalone tool that you can authenticate with your GitHub account to, and basically edit your XML documents from there. but we think it's quite valuable to have it integrated with the Leaf platform for projects that host their files with Leaf. So I'm going to briefly show you how that looks in our Leaf instance. If I just can. So this is one of the instances. This project just recently presented at the DH conference. It's a project. It's a research project supported by one of our partner instances. It took a French 1880 text manual from for girls, so education, history of education, late 19th century France as kind of like the subject area, and in addition to information about the author, so on and so forth, they created a very detailed encoding of this book that is using this editor. So what we have here is an XML document as a repository item object. What we're seeing here on the main view of the object is a pared down version of the editor that displays the table of contents, the WYSIWYG version, the styled version of the XML document, and the image that corresponds to that section. And in the Edit Content tab, users are able to edit and encode the XML document, which is saved as a media file in Drupal. So I know there is one minute left for me at this point. I'm just going to return to my presentation. If you want to explore it more, that's the QR code and the bit link. And we are very grateful to our developers, both to the LeafWriter developers and to our Islandora Drupal developer for helping us bring these two tools together.
Thank you very much, Mihaela. And last up for the site sharing is Mark Jordan.
You're missing Nat, I think. Nat.
Oh, no. Okay, so Nat, why don't you come up?
Well, you could be either of them in order, but just so you know,
Okay.
there's two more to do.
Okay.
You want to use your laptop?
Apologies, Nat.
What about your slide?
That's all right.
It's hard to see, I know.
You can move the chair, the table further.
So today I'm going to demonstrate a multilingual site. Oh, sorry, back. Hi. So I'm basically going to demonstrate a multilingual site in Islandora/Drupal. So Drupal really has very good multilingual capabilities out of the box, and Islandora sort of complements that with respect to indexing into Drupal Store or Fedora and so forth. So in this case, what we wanted to do was, this is a digital Tamil studies project, and we have a very large Tamil-speaking population here locally in Scarborough and GTA, and they just recently established a Tamil studies chair at UTSC. as well as there's a large global population, as many of you would be aware. So the evolving sort of library and research practices sort of call for the collections to be presented in the language of the communities, as well as any of your standard English or French and whatnot, right? So in this, for this project, the Digital Thumb Studies projects, we had a very type of materials: books, images, videos, data, web archives, and so forth. So they're very type of materials, and we wanted to really go full way, the UI, the metadata, searching, views, and serialization, and so forth. This was very important to the community. I'm a town speaker myself, and it was important to me as well. So in this case, I'm just going to demonstrate that in this case, the site UI, you can simply switch to the full UI to Tamil or English. And you can see that the full UI, the facets, the descriptions, all of them get switched to the local, the other language. And you can switch it back in any given page. So it's basic standard Drupal features. The other thing that Drupal really provides out of the box with basic number of configurations is to provide full multilingual metadata. So I've looked into a couple of other repository solutions, some of the famous ones, and they really struggle with handling multilingual metadata. Either you have to do some custom theming stuff to get it right, to show the stuff, but your editing workflow is pretty awkward, or they have support for UI but not metadata, and so forth, right? And Drupal and Islandora really work a lot of it out of the box. So you could see a lot of this here, including the labels. So there are 3 or 4 modules in Drupal: the languages, the config translations, the UI translations, as well as the content translations. So you enable them, and there's quite a bit of guidance as to how to configure it. And once you do that, it allows you to, even though this is a metadata view, even if you have just a content type view, it will display it in the longer language.
How's that XML look, Nat? If we look at the bottom when it's translated, it's still the English record, right? When you go to the view mods record?
Yeah, so there are a couple of places where we still need to do a little bit more work. So the JSON and JSON-RD have proper language tags and the serialization. The mods and the Dublin code, they don't have proper language switch. We have to have a little bit more work in the
Probably not the time for me to bring that.
I'll just go over some of the collections here. They're interesting collections. The first one is a collection. It's an art. Let me go and switch to English. The first one is a traditional archival collection, digitized archival copies of the digital archive, physical archive housed at the UTSC archive. It's an important leader of the Sri Lankan town-speaking people in Sri Lanka. The second and third collections are traditional books and encyclopedia type of collections. This is a PowerPoint manuscript collections, actually digitized that in Scarborough from a real local collector, which would have been otherwise at risk. Nice things about this is that you can really zoom in to read it. It's really difficult to read. You need a special training to read it. And so zooming, and it really helps some people to really zoom into their letters to read it. So it's standard OpenStreak, and sorry, actually in this case, Meadow Viewer. As you could see, the Meadow Viewer itself doesn't do localization. So there's some viewers that do nice localization. Other viewers that still need a little bit more work. Brenda Beck, who's an anthropological researcher here, she has almost 50 years worth of research material. So it can be sort of research data itself. So it's a lot of images, audio recordings, transcripts, and so forth. And they all are pretty much handled pretty standard way in Islandora. So this is the Tamil animation of a very, okay, 1 minute. So, so I just wanted to show that the able player does support multilingual stuff. So you could upload multilingual transcripts and it will handle as well. Yep, there's a small web archive as well.
I like clicking the full screen player on the upper left. That's a nice replay webpage player feature. You can get up there. It's so awkward.
Okay, so yeah, just wanted to say there are other modules, translation management modules and whatnot that you can make use of. We don't actually make use of here, and we don't do OCR derivatives, etc. automatically right now, but in short, Islandora Drupal does multilingual very well. The serialization has proper serialization, and you don't need to do anything custom stuff to get standard Islandora working with multilingual content. Thank you.
Okay, and our last speaker and presenter for the site demos is Mark Jordan.
I'm going to demonstrate our institutional repository summit, which is running on Islandora 2. This is hard.
It's weird, right?
Even typing in front of a crowd is weird for me, so. So this website itself is not super remarkable. It's a standard institutional repository, about 25,000 items, 18,000 of which are theses, so it's our university's primary repository for theses and dissertations. But what I can show you, like for example, how we model those. I'm assuming that's being spelled correctly. Cat Health Monitor.
Looks right to me.
Thanks.
Got an extra space, but it should not.
Just to show you how we excuse me, model supplementary files, which to us are things like research data or appendices, not part of the proper PDF thesis documents, but other kinds of materials the student wishes to submit. And this is an undergraduate engineering science project, a graduating project. It's not a thesis, so it's multiple authors. And this particular course has teams of engineering students who get together and propose a kind of A to Z proposal for developing a product, but it does show how we model these supplementary files. These are the attachments here. But what is interesting about this site is the integrations that we either have now or are working on executing. Right now, I mentioned this already earlier today in the Islandora Workbench session. We have an automation that takes content on a nightly basis from our thesis registration system and pushes it into this group Islandora website via a couple of scripts that run in sequence. There's that one. We have upcoming, we have something, an integration with something called, and this is sponsored by the SFU's VP Research International, called the Researcher Expertise Engine. And it basically is a registry of publications broken down by discipline and research area for researchers at the university. And what we're going to be doing is, we have a person vocabulary, and we added a field to that vocabulary, SFU Computing ID, and we're currently populating the computing IDs of all the researchers, or selected researchers in that vocabulary. That will be the key to allow a view to be developed that will be queried from the SFU Researcher Expertise Engine to provide a tab on a researcher's record that shows their items in the IR. So that's going to be coming up soon. And two other integrations we have are via OAI PMH. One is we have currently working, this is only really of interest to Canadian implementers, but the Library and Archives Canada thesis harvesting, that's working now. And we're up and coming is open air, OAI PMH open air harvesting. So the open air indexer will be able to harvest records from our IR. But apart from that, it's fairly straightforward. We're still a work in progress. We launched a year ago, or last August, but we're still kind of experimenting with configurations and adding new features. One thing we didn't think we would be using, and we specifically excluded from the beginning, was large image content, because we didn't have any of that content in the old Summit. But we now have worked with a researcher who's retiring. He donated almost a career's worth of research in archaeology, and he has a lot of really high quality slides of archaeological digs, and we want to get that content in, so we're currently getting large image support working in this site. So that will add a whole new level of interest and variety to the mainly PDF based institutional repository. Although we do have quite a bit of video and audio, and part of our remit is to not only include straight up academic work, but also departments and institutes at SFU that are not so academic oriented, but more community oriented. SFU has a very strong community engagement mandate, and we have a lot of material in the IR that is not, published papers or theses. It's the papers and the presentations and so forth, and public talks from a variety of kind of community facing units at the university. So that's it.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much, everyone. And can we give one last round of applause to all of our